welcome into another video here on Zion Media. Now, today we are going to be talking about a theory, an idea that has been found all throughout Jewish mysticism and mythology, found in certain traditions, and that there's hints of in the temple as well. And that is that the fruit in the garden, well, let's just say it wasn't an apple. The idea is that the forbidden fruit, which Adam and Eve could not have children without, was actually sex. Which, yeah, I mean, to a lot of people, it's really obvious. And to a lot of other people, they're like, what? No, that couldn't be. So we're going to be talking about that and how that factors into the scriptures, as well as the idea that Cain may have been the seed of the serpent, which there are hints of in the scriptures. And whether that's literal or metaphoric, I'll let you decide. But the Gospel of John does say that Cain was of that evil one. But more specifically, not just in the temple endowment, this goes into, well, the fact that to become as the gods, which the forbidden fruit says you will be, it takes the union between a man and a woman being one, right? So, to get into this theory, I've got a slide prepared here for this. So, the seed of the serpent. Was the forbidden fruit sex? The serpent, seraphim, Cain, the son of the serpent being the Watcher's Oath, Kundalini, the LDS temple apron, Isaiah 14, Mary Magdalene, and the protected bloodline. So those are some of the summaries of the things. So for starters, a seraphim is a type of angel, and we're going to go into this. But anciently, a seraphim was symbolized by a serpent. So if you think that there was a magical talking snake that gave Adam and Eve an apple that caused them to fall, you're not looking deeper at the story, at what it's trying to tell. So, for starters, in Genesis, it says that the serpent has seed. In fact, after the fruit is partaken, there is a promise given by the Lord to Adam and Eve. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. That's what he says to the serpent, which I'm going to say the serpent is a seraphim. And yes, there is apocryphal evidence for this. So the serpent is given seed, biological offspring. God would not say thy seed to a literal snake. Snakes don't reproduce with women. This is a being capable of fathering children with a human woman. And this is also what's happening in the book of Enoch. Enmity between two bloodlines, one from Eve alone, one shared with the serpent. The seed of the serpent is a literal bloodline running through history. Now, I can already see a lot of people typing, and this is why I did the video first on where we have early LDS apostles, such as Heber C. Kimball, such as Brigham Young, talking explicitly about this idea that, for example, Michael, or Adam, was an exalted being who had a body from another world and then condescended to a lower level to seed this earth. And we also know from the temple that Lucifer and Michael knew each other on another world together. And we're going to get into the evidence of this in the scriptures, but there is evidence in apocryphal accounts that the angel, the seraphim, the serpent, lost his body as punishment. Because, for starters, why would they punish a serpent by saying he'll crawl on his belly? Well, I think I might have the answer for this. And again, this is just a theory, but is a theory that has widely been discussed in Jewish mythology, in certain Christian theologies, in Gnostic Christianity. And so we're going to explore it and see where the truth lies. Because again, maybe Cain isn't the literal offspring of Lucifer. But there's definitely the symbolism where the knowledge of good and evil, which allows us to become as the gods, is connected between the union between a man and a woman. And that without that sort of union, you cannot ascend to your highest level. So what is a serpent in Hebrew? Nahash, seraph, a shining one. So in Hebrew, Nahash, a serpent, also means a shining one or enchanter, which a shining one a glorious one. It's similar to the name Lucifer, light bearer, or shining one that fell. Hebrew, a seraph is a burning one, a fiery serpent, the same root word as seraphim. Numbers 21:8, the fiery serpents Moses dealt with are called seraph. Isaiah 6:2, the seraphim around God's throne are fiery winged beings. Isaiah 14:29, out of the serpent's root shall come a fiery flying serpent. Scholars, the brazen serpent Moses lifted likely had wings, a winged seraph. And I'm going to pull up an image of this that I have. 1 second. So here we have it, that a seraphim or seraph in singular are 6 winged fiery serpent-like divine beings in Hebrew tradition, often interpreted as winged serpents, dragons, or fiery divine messengers. The term is derived from the Hebrew word seraph, which means burn, to reference their fiery, poisonous, holy nature. So it's mentioned in Isaiah chapter 6. Seraphim appear in Isaiah's vision surrounding God's throne. They have 6 wings, 2 to cover their faces, reverence, 2 to cover their feet or lower body, humility, and 2 for flying. In Numbers 21:8, seraph refers directly to fiery serpents. The Hebrew phrase saraph means flying serpent or darting snake. So when the serpent is told he will crawl on his belly, well, the suggestion would be that the seraphim is losing his wings. And we're going to go in a little bit of what the wings symbolize and how different apocryphal texts kind of show an idea of what's going on. Seraphim are likely inspired by Egyptian cobra or winged serpents found in Levant iconography representing divine protection, royalty, and authority. They are burning ones associated with purification as one burns Isaiah's lips with a coal and divine judgment. And we also have, for example, in the book of Enoch, I believe it's on page 116 of the book of Enoch, it talks about how there are these serpent-like angels who are responsible for punishing evil spirits and guarding the gates of hell, and that they hold keys over hell. Similar to the angel in the book of Revelation, but not quite the same. Same kind of idea of divine judgment and punishment, but we are seeing that it is serpent-like angels in the book of Enoch. And I don't remember the exact chapter, but in my book of Enoch I have, which is the David Hawking book of Enoch, it is on page 116. And I'm going to now share that screen again because it got out. But what we can conclude is that the serpent in the garden wasn't a magical talking snake. Like, why would you listen to a snake coming out? Like it's silly. But when you understand the symbolism of the Near East, you can understand what's going on. It's okay. A seraphim represents an angelic being, a heavenly divine being. And here we have some pictures of what it may have looked like. There we have Moses with the serpent on the staff. Let's see if we can find brazen serpent. So here are some depictions of what the brazen serpent may have looked like. And it is a seraph, a burning one. Here we have that. And that's also going to go into some other traditions, because further in the East, there is also a serpent-like symbol, which is symbolized by a serpent with wings. And more specifically, it is associated with the union between the masculine and feminine. Another thing to note is that in the scriptures, it says that the seraphim dwell eternally in the presence of God. So you have to ask yourself, what does that mean that the seraphim dwell eternally in the presence of God? Well, we know that there is this phrase, to go no more out, that we talked about, again, in the doctrine of multiple probations that leaders of the church did teach. I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying that it was historically taught. That Heber C. Kimball explicitly, he's the most explicit teaching of it, saying that whatever labors he doesn't complete in this mortal probation, he's going to pick up in another one. But this to go no more out doctrine says that those who are perfected will go no more out, to dwell eternally in the presence of the Father. So could a seraphim be a divine being who has reached the celestial kingdom? And I've heard other people suggest that a cherubim is a terrestrial being, which actually makes sense. So a celestial being who condescends down would be a seraphim condescending. We would assume if Michael was of that level, he would be a seraphim. We can assume that because we know that there are special high-ranking angels called archangels that there are a limited number of, but we also know, based on the book of Enoch, there are many seraphim. There are the seraphim over the gates of hell. There are seraphim before the throne of God. There's a lot of different seraphim. So the fiery serpents Moses dealt with are called seraph. The seraphim around God's throne are fiery winged beings. Isaiah 14:29 says, out of the serpent's root shall come a fiery flying serpent. Scholars, the brazen serpent Moses lifted likely had wings, a winged seraph. The serpent in Eden was a seraphim, a fiery winged angelic being standing upright. The being lost its upright form. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. Genesis 3:14. Before the curse, the being stood upright, had wings, was luminous. After the curse, it crawls on its belly, wings removed, glory stripped. But we know it wasn't a literal snake. It was an angel, and that this serpent is symbolic of a celestial type being. The Armenian book of Adam and Eve, the tempter appeared in the garden as an angel, not a snake. And this is explicitly in the Apocrypha. It's in multiple apocryphal texts. I know it's also in there's one, I believe it's about Abraham, where he goes down into hell. I forget what it's called, but there is an apocryphal text of Abraham descending into hell where the devil is portrayed in a similar way, that in Eden he was an angel. The Armenian book of Adam and Eve, the tempter appeared in the garden as an angel, not a snake. In Armenian Apocrypha, after the fall, the tempter lost his garments of glory, not his wings. So somehow him having his wings stripped represents the same thing as having his garments of glory taken. And in First Enoch and other apocryphal texts, as scholar Margaret Barker notes, garments of glory represent the exalted, resurrected, and glorified state. So at the very least, him having his wings taken, him having his garments of glory taken, means he has his angelic status taken, and could very well be his body being taken if he had a body, which, if that's what the sin in the garden was, it would make sense to take away his body, right? Could this mean the being lost its body or glory because of what it did in the garden? The serpent was a seraphim. The curse stripped its wings, only then did it crawl. The serpent being fathered Cain in apocryphal texts. So this is going from some Jewish mythology. Targum Pseudo Jonathan, Genesis 4:1. Adam knew Eve, who had desired the angel, and she conceived and bore Cain of the angel of the Lord. So that guy, he's saying that, this is in Jewish tradition, that the angel fathered Eve. Not fathered Eve, fathered Cain through Eve. And we know that the angel, or the serpent, gave the fruit to Eve, and she says, I was beguiled. She didn't know any better. There's a certain connotation that maybe it wasn't consensual, right? And that may have been what happened. But regardless of that, this is in Jewish tradition. There's also certain traditions of Adam and Lilith and some stuff going on there. But Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, chapter 21, Samael, or the accuser, riding on the serpent, came to her, and she conceived Cain. Zohar, Bereshit, 36b, when they begat children, the firstborn was the son of the serpent's slime. In the Talmud, B. Shabbat, 146a, when the serpent came upon Eve, he injected filth into her. Note, the identity of this being, Samael, is debated. He may be a distinct figure, not necessarily Lucifer. In some apocryphal texts, I've even heard the name Gadriel as the angel in Eden. But regardless, it is a fallen angelic figure, not a snake. But the tradition is consistent across centuries, the serpent being fathered Cain. And we have in the Gospel of John, where it explicitly says, Cain was of that evil one. And again, we have thy seed and the seed of the serpent. We have Isaiah 14, which does talk about the fall of Lucifer, which some say is just about a Babylonian king. But later on in the verse, we talk about a bloodline of a serpent. So there's that. And the way it's described also mirrors the bloodline of the Davidic servant in Isaiah chapter 11, I believe. So in Gnostic scriptures, in Gnostic and Midrashic traditions agree, the Apocrypha of John, Gnostic, Eve was seduced by Yaldabaoth, a demonic demiurge who fathered Cain through her. Zohar, Bereshit 54a, Cain was conceived by the side of unholiness and Abel from the side of holiness. Because of this, Cain killed his brother. So there's that. Legend of the Jews, Louis Ginsburg, Cain was the fruit of a union between Eve and Satan, the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Pre-confirms when Adam saw Cain, he recognized at once this was not his son. Eve names Cain using language of a divine or upper being, not a lower human birth. This teaching appears in Second Temple sources, the Targums, the Zohar, and Gnostic writings. John 3:12, not as Cain, who was of that evil one, and slew his brother. Cain is never in Adam's genealogy, by the way. So in Genesis 5:3, and Adam begat a son in his own likeness, after his image, and called him Seth. So why is it then when Adam conceives Seth, he's like, finally, a son in my own image and in my own likeness. And I'm just noticing the outfit I have on kind of looks like Spider-Man, like with the blue and red. Like, I'm not complaining. I like it, but I'm getting Spider-Man vibes here. So Genesis 5 lists Adam's genealogy: Adam, Seth, Enos, Canaan. And Cain is never described in the way of being after Adam's own likeness and image. Cain has his own separate genealogy in Genesis 4, entirely separate from Adam's line. Gnostic tradition says that Abel was the divine image and Cain was the offspring of nether image. Two genealogies, two bloodlines, the text separates them deliberately from the very beginning, right? The bloodline continues the viper from the serpent's root. For out of the serpent, actually, went one ahead on that. The bloodline continues the viper from the serpent's root. So this goes into Isaiah chapter 14 after Lucifer falls. For out of the serpent's root, and this sounds similar to the root of Jesse and the Davidic servant, where there will be a rod, a shoot that comes forth from the stem of Jesse, which is Joseph Smith in the Restoration. And then out of those roots shall come a branch, and the branch of David is a name for the Davidic servant. For out of the serpent's root shall come forth a viper, and his fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent. Could that be the Antichrist? I don't know. Could that be another figure who is descended from that bloodline? Maybe a good figure. I don't know. It could be a lot of different things. Isaiah 14, the same chapter where Lucifer falls. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer? In the same chapter, a bloodline prophecy: out of the serpent's root grows a viper. So this is why I'm thinking those who think that this is just about a Babylonian king are wrong. For one, it is talking about a figure, a light bearer who falls from heaven, but then it is talking about the bloodline of the serpent here. And so we know Isaiah spoke in code to speak about certain events because he was of the holy order and was writing in secret, or the order of Melchizedek, or the visionary men, as they called them. The serpent has a root. Roots imply a genealogy, a family tree. The fruit of that root is a fiery flying serpent, a seraphim-like being in the bloodline. The book of Jubilees 4:22, the watchers sinned with the daughters of men, and the lineage spread. So we see this throughout Genesis with the watchers. We see this the whole book of Enoch is about this, and that's the reason why the earth had to be flooded, was because flesh was corrupted and Noah was from a special bloodline. And I've heard some people even suggest, based on this, that the story in Eden is mostly symbolic, that Adam represents man, and that it is a story to warn about these fallen angel figures. That I've heard that suggested. But based on the Restoration, we believe that Adam was a literal figure named Michael. But there's also a lot of other things we have to question. For example, after Cain slays Abel, why is it that he's cast out, and he tells the Lord, "You can't send me out there. Those people will kill me." What people? There were 4 people on the planet. Like, what's Cain talking about? Unless there may have been a previous creation, which I know there's certain sources with Joseph Smith maybe hinting at this about creation cycles on the earth. I know that there were other people who talked about pre-Adamites. But could it be that Michael descended into an already existing creation? That's a thought. I don't know. But there is this idea that there were other people. So I'm going to go through Apocrypha and stuff like that and see if we can figure out sometime who those other people were. But the point is, in this Genesis story, there is a lot going on that we don't understand. Part of it has to do with the Deuteronomist reform, switching things around. But there's clearly more to the picture. The fruit of the root is a fiery flying serpent, a seraphim-like being in the blood. Okay, I already went over that. Jubilees 5, 1-2. The angels of God saw how beautiful the daughters of men were and took wives from among them. The seed of the serpent is a literal lineage documented in both Isaiah and the Apocrypha. The oath on Mount Hermon. Let us all swear an oath and bind ourselves by mutual implications not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. 1 Enoch 6, 4-5. 200 angels swore a covenant oath on Mount Hermon to take human wives. Mount Hermon is Hebrew for the mountain of the oath or curse. They bound themselves by mutual implications, curses, by binding a sworn covenant. The Watchers originally descend to instruct the children of men sent by God, but in Jubilees 5, 6, against his angels whom he had sent to the earth, he was angry enough to uproot them. And interestingly enough, when the angels are doing this oath, doing this secret knowledge, there is an oath that is given that involves a secret handshake and a hidden name that they are not to reveal. And somehow this represents the hidden knowledge that the Watchers were passing to these human women, which end up being corrupted and turned to magic. Stay with me, this is important for understanding what the forbidden fruit is. This is very important. All right? I promise I'm going somewhere with this. This isn't me just on a tangent about angels coming down and having sex with women. All right? There is a point to this. The fallen angels organized by oaths, signs, and tokens, a counterfeit of divine order. And again, this is in 1 Enoch 69. The secret oath involved a name, a sign, a handshake between the leaders. The forbidden knowledge as seduction. So again, what is the knowledge given in Eden? You have to ask yourself that. Well, the serpent tells Eve that you will have knowledge of good and evil, and you will be as the gods. So, again, we're getting into gnosis, Gnosticism, with that there is secret knowledge that allows you to become as the gods. And a lot of Christians will say, see, that's the first lie in Eden, that we could become as the gods. What does God say? Man has become as one of us, knowing good and evil. So after they partake of this fruit, it makes them more like the gods, but then they place a cherubim in the way of the tree with a flaming sword so that they cannot partake of the fruit of eternal life, lest they live forever in their sinful state. Okay, so what they did made them more like the gods, but it also leaves them in an imperfect state. And what I would suggest is that the true spiritual power comes from the union of a man and a woman. And that is why, because we know the temple is symbolic. The temple itself says it, that if you are true and faithful, you will receive these things for real. But, again, it is symbolic. So, what is the truth of it? Well, a man and a woman have to be sealed together. They have to become one, both spiritually and physically, to become as the gods and be crowned with eternal lives. So how does that happen? Well, there's a lot of spiritual traditions around the world about the both spiritual and physical union between a man and a woman, leading to higher levels, where when it's someone that you truly love and are truly one with, you can do things that you wouldn't normally be able to do. More specifically, there's an Eastern tradition called Kundalini, which is also symbolized by, you guessed it, a serpent. So if a to go no more out level being, a seraphim that dwells eternally in the presence of God unless they choose to condescend down, if they are symbolized by a serpent, could it be that the way they reached that higher level of the celestial kingdom, if we'll call it that, because there are many words for these levels across different cultures, then could it be that the only way to reach that higher celestial level is a union between a man and a woman, being one? And that maybe that's why they are symbolized by a serpent, because it is that universal symbol, and it is found across different cultures, across different traditions, all over the world. That's sort of what I'm getting at here. And what the book of Enoch really emphasizes is that these fallen angels introduced forbidden knowledge to those human women that it led to them having the Nephilim, these children that were bigger, stronger, more powerful than humans. It also led them to having forbidden knowledge, which led to witchcraft, which led to magic, which in the book of Enoch, magic and witchcraft is described as a corruption of the power that the gods have. Which, when I'm going into stuff about like manifestation and quantum physics and how our consciousness affects reality, I've had people accuse me of teaching the occult. Which, one, I'd say Joseph Smith, at least when he was younger, seemed to believe in folk magic, which is more occult than anything I'm doing. But two, I believe good and evil power might work on the same principles. And the book of Enoch seems to imply it when it is teaching us that magic is a corruption of God's power, that is twisting it, that this witchcraft that was taught to these women by their fallen angel husbands was a corruption. So, forbidden knowledge as seduction, and they began to reveal the mysteries to their wives and to their children. And the mysteries can also be the ordinances, but they were teaching secret higher level knowledge of the gods. And we see this across different traditions in the world. Again, Azazel taught metallurgy, weapons, warfare, cosmetics, adornment. Samihaza taught enchantments and root cutting, herbal magic. Baraqel taught astrology, Kakobel, the constellations. Hermione, whose name means the one of the curse or oath, taught sorcery and spells. Shamziel taught signs of the sun. Shariel taught signs of the moon. And is that astrology that they're teaching? Because here's another thing. A lot of people, like in the world, they point out how all of these famous like billionaires and super rich people and powerful, they believe in astrology. And Joseph Smith seemed to believe in astrology to an extent too, where the conception of his children, when he was getting the plates, all these things lined up with certain astrological events, and we know his family knew about that stuff. So there is a deeper level knowledge, or gnosis. And where this corrupted magic seems to come by is that, there are these universal things. There is power in the sun, there is power in the stars, and God has mastery over that power. So when you corrupt that power, it is corrupting what is sacred. That seems to be the implication, because why would angels know astrology if astrology is purely evil? Perhaps it is the corruption of it that is forbidden. The knowledge taught to the women was the origin of magic and witchcraft. Forbidden knowledge from the angelic realm given through intimate relationship. There arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication and were led astray. And throughout many of these Eastern traditions, there is this idea that both spiritual and physical union between a man and a woman is a source of spiritual power, or magic, or whatever. And that there is a right way of doing this and a wrong way. For everything light side, there is a dark side counterpart. And for everything dark side, there's a light side counterpart. Ancient cultures knew the same story. Babylonian and Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki, those who came down from heaven, they descended to earth, took human wives, and produced hybrid offspring. Transmitted celestial knowledge, agriculture, mathematics, writing, calendar. Then the Nephilim of Genesis 6, the same event described in Sumerian myth. Across cultures, gods descend, impregnate women, and produce extraordinary children. Egyptian, Greek, Norse, Mesoamerican traditions all preserve the same memory of gods, higher level beings, divine beings coming down and impregnating human women. This is not mythology, it's a cross-cultural historical record of a real event. The Immaculate Conception of a seed from a divine being into a human woman is the oldest story in the world. I had to pause that real quick because I was getting water and I was parched. But to continue, was the forbidden fruit sexual knowledge? And is sexual knowledge tied to higher spiritual abilities? The evidence in the text, LDS theology, Adam and Eve could not have children until after partaking of the fruit. The fruit gave them knowledge of good and evil, including sexual knowledge. Their immediate response, they covered their genitals with fig leaves. If the sin was eating a literal fruit, why cover up their reproductive organs? Adam, what have you done? How do you know that you're naked? Adam and Eve, they looked and they realized they were naked. Like, listen, I don't have to go into any details of what's going on there, but like you can use your imagination. Like they just partook of the fruit and then they look at themselves and they're like, oh gosh, what did I, oh God, I'm naked. Right. If the sin was eating the literal fruit, why cover up their reproductive organs? Ancient Jewish midrash, the serpent desired Eve after seeing her and Adam coupling. The serpent's seduction of Eve is described in sexual terms across ancient Jewish texts. Genesis, Rabbah 18:6, the serpent saw Adam and Eve in union and conceived a passion for her. Genesis, Rabbah 19:3, the reason the serpent is introduced after the description of their nakedness is because he saw them and desired. So this is in Jewish tradition. Like, I mean, I guess why would it be something to even add in the story that they were naked? By the way, God made the first people, they were naked. It's important that you know this for some reason. I don't know. The hidden symbol of 9 leaves. In the LDS endowment, after partaking the fruit, Adam and Eve make aprons. They cover their reproductive organs. The temple confirms the sexual nature of the transgression. The apron worn in the temple ceremony has 9 leaves, at least the original one. They've made updated, like mass-made ones were just a pattern, but the original handmade ones all had 9 leaves. 9 is the number of months in a human pregnancy. The temple is suggesting the consequence of the forbidden act was pregnancy, and you have to look at what the consequences for their sin was. Adam, for your sin, you will have to bear the burden and work by the sweat of your brow all your days to provide for your wife. And Eve's punishment, Eve, for your sin, you will have pain in labor and in childbirth. Like, God's not punishing them. That's just the natural consequence of their actions. Like, because you did this bad thing, Eve, I'm going to make it painful when you give birth. Or it's childbirth just painful, and God's saying, well, because you've done this, you're going to have to deal with this now. Well, Adam, because you did this, you're going to have to provide for your children. Well, one of them was his, at least. At least one was. The fig leaf apron covering of that which produced the sin and its consequence. This symbol has been encoded in the ceremony since the temple's founding. LDS temple itself encodes the teaching. The fruit equals a sexual act. The pregnancy equals Cain and Abel. Sexual energy as creative or godlike power. Sanskrit, Kundalini Shakti, serpent power. So in Eastern traditions, there is this idea of Kundalini, and it is tied to spiritual power. It is tied to manifestation, and it is tied to sexual energy. Now, for context, before I was ever into anything LDS, I was into all sorts of spiritual stuff, and I am someone who I seek the truth in anything and everything. And I try to relate my own experiences to spiritual things. So if I have a story that can help people understand a spiritual thing, I tell them that story. If I can relate to something, I relate to it, right? The point being that I understand what Kundalini is, and I also understand numerology, and my number code is 868, which is, the 8 is manifestation energy. I would also say it's Kundalini energy. It could it be serpent energy? But the 6 is emotional energy, and that's what my Oraqel Code is when we're talking about the Oraqel codes, which on that, like, I thought that stuff was kind of stupid when Shane first introduced it to me when I met him. Until he runs mine, I'm like, okay, this is legit. And it's gematria, right? They call it an Oraqel Code at Zion Media because, they're branding it or whatever. It's like, oh, this cool, unique thing. But it is Hebrew gematria and is what the Jews did. The Jews used gematria and they did believe in this system. And in it, 8 is tied to that sort of spiritual power, that spiritual creative energy. And I would say I'm quite a creative person in that sense. But Kundalini energy is tied to the same thing spiritually. So it is that same type of energy, and it is symbolized by a serpent, a coiled serpent at the base of the spine, dormant, sexual, and creative energy. The spine is the tree. The Sushumna channel runs through it. Male, Pingala, and the female, Ida, currents must unite to awaken the Kundalini. When awakened, the energy ascends to the crown, and the person becomes as a god. The Cacodeus, twin serpents on a staff, Kundalini physiology, the spinal cord. The Kundalini serpent is often depicted with wings, a seraphim. Here's something else. In Jewish mythology, we have these 7 levels of ascension. And according to people like Avram Gileadi, the famous Isaiah scholar who talks about Isaiah representing the 7 levels of ascension, that somebody who reaches the highest level of ascension is a seraphim, a serpent. And in these Eastern traditions, once the energy reaches from the bottom of the chakra to the top, and I'm just saying it might be the same thing. You don't have to believe this, but they ascend in a way that's symbolized by a serpent. And we know Joseph Smith said that all religions came from the original Adamic language, the Adamic religion of Adam. So could it be that these different spiritual traditions are taking pieces of the truth and interpreting it their own way? But we have that common thread that it is symbolized by a serpent and that there is an ascension through the spinal cord. We also have the fact that Jesus Christ lived 33 years and that we have 33 vertebrae in the spinal cord that we ascend through to become like Christ, because that is our goal ultimately, is to embody the image of Christ, to take upon ourselves his name, to become his sons and daughters, which doesn't mean that he doesn't have a father, the Most High God, the Father of gods, God the Father, whoever you want to call him, El Elyon. But when awakened, the energy ascends to the crown. And we also have in the Proverbs where it talks about how a crown, a virtuous woman is a crown to her husband, which my understanding of that is in Kabbalah, that on the tree of life, which is another ascension thing in Jewish Kabbalah mysticism, is a similar ascension where you ascend. The crown is the end of the life path that you ascend to if you align to your highest purpose. So we have this idea of a crown. The Cacodeus, twin serpents on a staff, equals Kundalini physiology, the spinal cord. The Kundalini serpent is often depicted with wings, a seraphim. And so I'm gonna pull this up real quick. I'm typing this on the page. Kundalini serpent. So we're gonna look at this a little bit. So this is in Eastern traditions, like it's in like Hinduism and some Chinese type beliefs. It's just Eastern traditions have this idea of chakras and, ascension. And we also have people who suggest that perhaps Jesus Christ was studying Eastern traditions in his youth. I've heard that theory, that a lot of people think that. Some people think Jesus and Buddha may have met. So share this window. So here we have the Kundalini serpent type symbol. So here we have it depicted with wings, ascending through the 7 chakras, which could the 7 chakras be the same things as the 7 levels of ascension to become a seraphim, to go no more out? Maybe. We have this here where, again, like they are suggesting that the symbol comes from a cobra, which is the same thing that people thought may have been the flying fiery serpents in the book of Numbers. And that it ascends through the spinal cord in that way. So that is how we see it. And in Chinese mythology, I'm going to show something else. In the Chinese creation myth, this is something really cool. They have a version of Adam and Eve, who Adam and Eve in this story, they're not called Adam and Eve. I think they're called Nuxi and Fuwu. Fua. I'm just going to look for Chinese Adam and Eve. Nuxi, I believe. Yeah. So this is like the Chinese story of Adam and Eve. And what is interesting, here's a couple things that will stand out, is one, they are portrayed as gods, as human manifestations of the divine masculine, the divine feminine, the father and the mother, which kind of goes into Adam God theory a little bit, where in some sense, Adam and Eve are a manifestation of Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother. Now, I don't think that that's necessarily literal. We know that there is a literal God the Father who is not the Archangel Michael, but we also know Michael means he who is like God. So if there is one like unto the Son of Man, could there be one like unto God? Well, the Book of Abraham suggests, yes, there is one like unto God, and I believe that is Michael. So Michael is, and his wife, in some sense, are a image of Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother. A perfect, just like a daughter and a son would be the image of their father and mother. But what you notice about this is, and I'm gonna, can I zoom in here? Well, what stands out to me about this, I'm trying to blow it up a little bit. Okay, so here it is bigger. Nuwa and Fuxi. It's not Nuxi and Fuwa, it's Nuwa and Fuxi. I got it mixed up. First off, it's got the serpent tail here, and they're intertwined like in a Kundalini sense. So see how they have these serpent tails in all of these ancient ones. So this is from 2,000 years ago, and their serpent tails are intertwined. Okay? Again, this is 2,000 years old, and it is showing us stuff. But one thing you might also notice if you have been through the LDS temple endowment is that there is a compass and a square, which you should recognize. See that? Compass, square, and double helix. And I'm trying to, scrolling down on the wrong side. So when Nuwa and Fuchs appear together in classic Chinese artworks, they were always in a mating position with Nuwa holding a compass and Fuxi carrying a square. So why 2,000 years ago is this serpent Kundalini union of the first man and woman, Adam and Eve, if you will, who are a manifestation of the gods in human flesh and helped participate in the creation of the earth, just like Michael in the endowment. Why do they have a compass and a square? Because what are the compass and the square? They are the creation tools of the architect. That is what it is. And that's why Freemasonry uses it as well. But we also see, before Freemasonry, early Christian artwork showing Jesus Christ holding a compass and square. So no, Joseph Smith was not just making stuff up. He absolutely wasn't. There's no way Joseph Smith could have known this stuff. And in fact, he may have not understood all of it in that probation. He might not have. This is insane. And then in the Gnostic scriptures, we have stuff like how the holiest of holies is the bridal chamber, as they call it. How they would have to learn secret signs and tokens and passcodes to go through it. That's insane. But to get back to the presentation, because I just want to go in depth about that. But the intertwined serpent tails and the compass and square seem to be symbolic of the union between the divine masculine and divine feminine. So, in Genesis 3:5, for God doth know that in that day ye eat thereof, ye shall be as the gods. The serpent told the truth. The sexual creative power is the godlike power, or rather the union between a masculine and feminine who are perfectly one is the true power of the holy order of God. LDS Temple and Kundalini connection. LDS theology. Man and woman must be sealed together to enter the celestial kingdom. The sealing, the union of masculine and feminine to access divine creative power. DNC 132, the eternal marriage covenant is what makes exaltation possible. And, you know, if you don't believe in DNC 132, that's fine, but it's just something to support the evidence, because I know there's people out there who don't like that one because they don't like polygamy and whatnot. Listen, I'm trying to teach everyone, if you like polygamy, if you don't like polygamy, I'm trying to help you understand things better. This parallels Kundalini exactly. Male and female energy must unite to ascend. The creation power is sexual in nature. Gods create through sealed partnership. The serpent in Eden introduced this power prematurely outside the covenant. Inside the covenant, exaltation; outside the covenant, corruption and serpent seed. The sin was not that the power was sexual. The sin was that it was accessed outside of the divine order. All right, and this also goes to the prophecy of Isaiah 54 with the barren woman. So one thing I've thought, and I don't know this for sure, is that perhaps Mary Magdalene, who early LDS apostles said was the wife of Jesus, who the Nemenhall record, an apocryphal text, which I believe is actually legitimately channeled, doesn't mean I believe in everything and it's true, because I don't. But two things that stand out. One, Elohim, father and mother, when they are creating, they have to create together. So the father has half of the power and the mother has a different power. And both of those powers in this text have to be used together to create. And two, the Nemenhall also says that Mary Magdalene was the wife of Jesus Christ and that she was of some sort of priesthood order of Miriam, and talks about the mother's priesthood that the women naturally have it, which in the temple, women are giving blessings, but they're never ordained to the priesthood. So, you know. But why barren women were chosen? So Abraham was commanded to marry Sarah, who was barren. Isaac married Rebekah, also barren. Jacob married Rachel, also barren at first. A pattern: the covenant sons are born only through divine intervention. If fallen angels were seeding the earth with hybrid offspring, God's strategy to choose women who cannot conceive naturally. Their children could only come through God's power, not through fallen bloodlines. The seed of Abraham could not be corrupted because it could only be born by miracle. Barren wives equals protection from the corruption of the serpent seed, which again, this is, I know primarily Isaiah 54 is about the Davidic servant's wife, but it could be dual prophecy about Mary Magdalene, perhaps. The bride protected from the serpent bloodline. Isaiah 54, 5-6. The Lord calls to a woman forsaken as his bride. The Gnostic Gospels, Gospel of Philip, Gospel of Mary. Mary Magdalene was the companion of Christ. Luke 8:2. Jesus cast 7 demons out of Mary Magdalene. 7 equals the number of completeness, total spiritual cleansing. Could 7 demons imply she had been entangled in the serpent bloodline's corruption? She was the first witness of the resurrection, the most trusted witness. Her name, Magdala, tower or elevated place, a protected, fortified woman. Consider, could Mary Magdalene represent the woman of Genesis 3:15 fulfilled? The woman extracted from the serpent's sphere, cleansed and placed at the side of the seed of the woman. The enmity of Genesis 3:15 runs from Eve to cross. The bride at his tomb may be the woman finally free from it. So that is something very interesting there. And I've also heard people suggest that maybe Mary Magdalene did not have 7 demons in her. Maybe she had 7 daimons or spirits, and that it could have been the 7 levels of ascension. It could be that she was a 7th level temple priestess. I've heard Dave Butler say. I don't know for sure, but it's something to consider. The thread that runs through everything. The serpent in Eden was a seraphim, a fiery-winged angelic being. The sin was sexual, the apron covering the pregnancy all confirm it. Ancient sources, Targum, Zohar, pre-Legends of the Jews, Gnostic Gospels all say that the serpent being fathered Cain. Seth was in Adam's image, Cain was not. 2 separate bloodlines from the beginning. John 3:12. Cain was of that evil one. John confirms the lineage. This is 1 John 3:12, not John 3:12. My mistake. Isaiah 14:29. The serpent has a root, and its fruit is a fiery, flying serpent. The Watchers, Enoch, extended the corruption 200 angels on Mount Hermon. Kundalini equals the sexual creation tower, the godlike power the serpent offered. Barren wives equal God protecting the covenant bloodline from angelic contamination. Mary Magdalene, 7 demons or 7 spirits cast out, first witness of the resurrection, the bride protected. The enmity of Genesis 3:15 is not a metaphor. 2 bloodlines, 1 story, running from Eden to now. So that about sums it up a little bit. And to just discuss and summarize a little bit. What is the point of this? Why is this important? Well, because a lot of people, they don't understand that the temple is saying everything done here is symbolic, but if you are true and faithful, you can receive it for real and be sealed up by the Holy Spirit of promise when he comes. So here's a question. Do you want to be as the gods? Now, I'm not telling you to do anything naughty. I mean, you might have to, but the way to access the fullness of that power is to be in union with somebody who is compatible. So I don't think it's just anybody. I don't think you just marry someone because they're cute. I think there has to be a level of spiritual compatibility too. Like, I'm going to be honest. I don't know if it's because I've been into weird spiritual stuff since I was like 14 years old, 15 years old. But I get, even if a girl is like really cute, I get turned off unless there's some sort of like connection there. And it's like very rare that I have like feelings for somebody. And I think it's something spiritual. I think that, there is a level of spiritual compatibility to become one if our spirits are trying to become their highest versions of themselves, and that the physical union is a manifestation of a deeper spiritual union that happens in the unseen world. One thought: if seraphim are divine beings who have condescended, they would have to be sealed up to get to that exalted level, right? So at that point, if they condescend down, then there would already be somebody that they are tied to. Could it be that when people report this idea of having soulmates or twin flames or whatever they want to call it, that it is someone who they were previously sealed to and who they both chose to come down to go out again and condescend, and that there is some sort of invisible spiritual tie that connects certain people? A lot of people would report that. Could that be the sealing power of the Holy Spirit of promise, that even when certain people are separate, you can feel them, you can be connected? Have you experienced anything like this? I would love to hear about that in the comments section. And perhaps that is one of the risks in condescending, is that, if we already have spiritual families or spouses or whatever, that to come down here, you are truly laying everything on the altar. And that is what the Holy Order appears to be based on Alma's description, is those who are called and foreordained on account of good works before this world for a specific mission. So to be of that Holy Order, you have to have somebody, even if you're not physically with them, who you are spiritually one with, who your spirits are connected through some sort of spiritual tie or soul connection. And for you to reach your highest potential, you do need the right person. And I'm not saying just marry anybody. It has to be somebody who is spiritually compatible. And if you have something like that, it is something you shouldn't take for granted. I mean, that's something so rare and so special, and not everyone finds that in this lifetime necessarily. But if you do have somebody, if you are one, that is how you access the fullness of your priesthood. I've seen it before with people that when they have somebody, for example, Joseph Smith, when Joseph Smith did not have Emma around or was not on good terms with him, there are reports that he could not receive revelation to the same degree. But when he had his wife, his elect lady, he could receive like boundless revelation. I tried to snap my finger. There, I snapped my fingers for real. Messed that up. He could receive boundless revelation. And so, what can we understand? Whether Cain is literally the offspring physically of Satan, perhaps by Satan getting Adam and Eve to partake of the fruit, he was somehow able to get some of his spirits in there. He even says, I will take the spirits that follow me, and we will take the bodies that you make for the children of Adam and Eve. Maybe that's what's going on. And maybe one of Satan's people got in the body of Cain. Who knows? That could be what it means, that he's of that evil one. But you to access the fullness of your power must be one with your husband or wife. You must be emotionally open. And one thing, my opinion, that I've noticed is that women are more spiritually gifted and powerful than men. Women's intuition is incredible. Like, they can just know things and they can just be tuned in. It's almost like they're like a battery of just pure energy when it comes to spiritual energy. That being said, it seems that sometimes men are able to form that energy, to shape it into something. Like, if it was like, this is a stupid metaphor, like a flamethrower where the woman provides the gasoline for the flamethrower and the man is the spout that the flame's coming out. You're shaping the fire, or is the spark, right? But there's a lot of things. There's trust, there's vulnerability. And if you're watching this, you should work on this, and you should be seeking after spiritual gifts. You should be seeking after being one. And understanding that that is where the true power comes if we are to be as the gods, now and forever. And if you think you are of the Holy Order or want to be of the Holy Order, because when the 144,000 show up, when John the Revelator shows up, as D&C 77 talks about, there will be those who are brought from the Holy Order into the Church of the Firstborn to be sealed up to exaltation. That is a part of it. It's not the whole thing. So you should be asking the Lord to guide you in these things. So until next time, I'm Latter-day Chad. Make sure that you hype this video, like it, leave a comment, leave lots of comments. I replied to all the comments on here. And let me know if you have any suggestions. Let me know if you agree, if you disagree, what you disagree with. I'm always open. If someone ever disagrees with me, I am more than happy to have them on here and explain why I'm wrong. But I'm more than willing to debate things. So let me know what you think, and don't be afraid to share your opinion. Till next time.
You lit the torch before the flood. You walked through thorns and gave your blood. You bore the weight, you took the